She stood up dinner and said, "I can't waste any more life on you." I just nodded and loaded the dishwasher. 76 days later, she found out who owned her rented view. The ceiling light in our dining room has always been too cold, fluorescent white that makes everything look like a crime scene. 22 years of marriage, and neither of us ever changed it. Maybe we should have seen that as a sign. I cut into my steak, watching red seep onto the white plate. It's Wednesday, middle of the week, middle of our lives. Jade sits across from me, perfectly made up for what should be just another weeknight dinner. Her lipstick is flawless, crimson hair falling in soft waves, new earrings catching the harsh light. She's dressed for an audience that isn't here. She's wearing makeup like she's going to court. I think the thought drifting through my mind like a piece of debris on a stagnant pond. We chew in mechanical synchronicity. The only sounds are metal against porcelain and the low hum of the refrigerator. I've grown accustomed to this silence, this void where conversation used to be. It reminds me of sitting at a bus stop next to a stranger, both waiting for different departures. Careful not to make eye contact. I'm 60 now. Jade is 47. We've been married for 22 years. No children together. Though her daughter from a previous relationship lives on the opposite coast. I'm a freelance logistics strategy consultant working from home. Jade is the senior communications director at MediaVerve, one of those marketing firms with glass walls and motivational quotes stenciled onto them. We're comfortable financially, socially acceptable, a successful couple by all measurable metrics. Except we died years ago. We just forgot to stop breathing. Without warning. Jade pushes her plate forward. Silverware clatters. She stands up her chair, scraping against the hardwood with deliberate drama as if she's been rehearsing this moment. "I'm done with this," she says. Just 3 words. No inflection, no preamble. I set my fork down gently like I'm handling fragile crystal. Not because I'm shocked, but because I'm not. I look up at her. This stranger I've slept beside for over 2 decades. Finally, I reply. 1 word. Not sarcastic, not bitter. Just a simple acknowledgement of reality landing on our dinner table. Her expression shifts. I've gone off script. She expected tears or rage or desperate pleas. Instead, I've acknowledged the obvious, and it's thrown her completely. "I'm not asking." She continues, regaining her composure. "I'm telling you, I've found someone who sees me." I resist the urge to smile. The classic line from every affair novel ever written. I don't ask who. I already know Jade would never leap without a safety net firmly in place. Instead, I stand up, brush imaginary crumbs from my slacks like I'm concluding a business meeting that ran too long. I'll wash the dishes. I say. She stands there still waiting for the reaction she's entitled to. The drama. The scene. The validation that leaving me is difficult. Noteworthy. I give her nothing. No anger to justify her departure. No grief to feed her ego. The truth is, I grieved this marriage already quietly in private moments. I've already felt the loss, the disappointment, the regret. Now we're just completing paperwork. It feels like watching your favorite bookstore get replaced by a vape shop. Something precious is gone, but the grief has moved from sharp to dull, a fact rather than a wound. Her perfume lingers in the room, amber and vanilla, but it's already fading. By the weekend, she's gone. No messages to her parents. No calls to her daughter. No letter left behind, just a Spotify playlist titled New Chapter, New Me. The first song, Girl on Fire. I laugh bitterly at that. She's behaving like a teenager experiencing her first breakup, not a woman ending a 22-year marriage. As I wash the dishes that night, staring out the window at the darkening sky, I remember a business card tucked away in my file drawer. Mira Lawson, the family attorney, who helped my best friend through his divorce 3 years ago. "If you ever need to keep your peace," she had said when we met at his house, warming. "Call me, silence is enough." I dry my hands, pull open the file drawer. The card is still there, cream-colored edges slightly worn. I dial the number. 8 hours later, I'm sitting across from a woman in a navy suit who smiles like she's already 3 moves ahead of me. Mira Lawson's office smelled of leather and confidence. Dark walnut panels lined the walls adorned with minimalist artwork, geometric shapes that somehow conveyed the clean precision of legal victories. Her desk, solid walnut with grain lines like topographic maps, dominated the space without appearing ostentatious. She offered me coffee in a bone china cup that looked too delicate for the conversation we were about to have. The cup's rim was gold-leafed, a subtle reminder that elegance and strength often coexist. "Are you certain this is the path you want to take?" she asked, her voice measured and free of judgment. Then, after I nodded, "How silent do you want this to be?" I set the cup down, watching the dark liquid settle. "I want her to think she's won," I replied, "and I want to do it without saying a word." Mira's smile was thin, but genuine. She opened a leather portfolio and made a single note. "Then we begin today." The Vermont cabin was the first piece I moved. Jade had always called it my financial sinkhole, a rustic 2-bedroom on 3 acres of woodland that I'd purchased 15 years ago. It was where I went to think, where I drafted my best logistic strategies, where I could hear myself breathe. She visited twice, complained about the lack of cell service both times, and never returned. By Wednesday, ownership had transferred to the Oakline Foundation, a nonprofit, co-founded by my goddaughter, Danielle Rusk. On paper, it was a donation. In reality, it was the first thread pulled from a carefully woven tapestry of financial entanglement. The beauty of separate property doctrine, Mira explained as we reviewed the transfer documents, is that it rewards foresight and punishes complacency. Next came the investment properties, 3 condos in Denver, a small office building in Philadelphia. All technically joint assets, all strategically sold to a shell corporation called Ironshade Holdings. The name was deliberately bland, corporate-sounding without revealing purpose or ownership. The kind of entity that appears in fine print nobody reads. Our retirement accounts required more finesse. We divided them into 2 streams. The primary account, visible, traceable, still receiving regular deposits from my consulting work. This would be the account Jade's attorney would find during discovery. The secondary flow, redirected to a blind trust established 3 years ago during what I had casually mentioned, was estate planning for my sister's kids. Jade had signed the paperwork without reading it, as she did with most documents I handled. "What you're doing isn't revenge," Mira noted during our 3rd meeting. "It's preemptive peace." I silently revoked Jade's access to our financial documents, erased her name from properties acquired before our marriage using personal property loopholes, and maintained a perfectly normal facade to the outside world. I still attended our neighbor's barbecue, still consulted with my regular clients, still sent birthday cards to her parents. Meanwhile, Jade had already started her new era with Zeke Dalton. Zeke was 37, a personal trainer who worked on the ground floor of Jade's office building. Their initial contact had been coincidental coffee, at the same time gym schedules that overlapped company mixers where he worked the room. But those coincidences evolved into late-night training sessions and hotel check-ins with no conferences in attendance. I learned about him not through confrontation or private investigators, but through Jade's increasingly theatrical social media presence. Sunset-filtered selfies with captions like "Phoenix rising from ruins," rooftop video clips with Zeke soundtracked by songs about choosing fire over fear. Each post was a performance of liberation that revealed more insecurity than freedom. I didn't delete the Spotify playlist she'd left behind. I kept it, each song preserved like evidence in an untried case. The melody of abandonment had its own evidentiary value. My strategy became one of deliberate disappearance. No calls, no texts. I told no friends about our separation. When acquaintances asked about Jade, I simply said she was pursuing new opportunities. Technically true, if euphemistic. My silence was my shield. My silence was also my sword. The absence of reaction, Mira advised, is often more unsettling than any outburst. I found a new home without listing our old one for sale. The transaction happened through a private broker, completed in 3 days with cash from accounts Jade had never known existed. The house wasn't large, but it had character hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, a study with built-in bookshelves, a kitchen with morning light that made even black coffee look golden. While Jade curated her reinvention narrative online, I was methodically severing financial ties that would have given her claims on my future. Not out of spite, but self-preservation. Not to punish, but to protect the quietude I'd finally recognized as essential. The divorce papers weren't served dramatically. They arrived via certified mail to her office, professional and dispassionate. No accusations, no demands for explanation. Just the cold machinery of legal dissolution set in motion. She tried calling twice. I let both go to voicemail. She left no messages. On social media, her posts grew more frequent, more carefully composed. Photos at upscale restaurants with Zeke, his gym-sculpted arms always visible in the frame. Motivational quotes about embracing change and living authentically. The desperation behind each perfectly filtered image was palpable. I continued my work, consulted with clients, made breakfast at 6:30 each morning, read until midnight most evenings. The rhythm of my days remained unchanged, while hers became increasingly performative. Monday morning, I was stirring sugar into my coffee when a notification appeared on my phone from the bank. Primary cardholder address update confirmed. Jade had officially moved in with Zeke. She thought she'd climbed to a higher floor, but in reality, I had removed the ladder entirely. Through a colleague who remained in contact with both of us, I began receiving unintentional intelligence about Jade's new life with Zeke Dalton. Their apartment was in one of those high-rise luxury condominiums. Concrete boxes with just enough quartz countertops and recessed lighting to justify the inflated rent. The kind of place where 30-somethings sink their salaries to maintain the illusion they've made it. Zeke's idea of decorating involved protein tubs displayed like trophies and gaming equipment, tangled in plain sight. The man lived like an overgrown teenager with muscles, the pervasive smell of hair gel, and pre-workout supplements embedding into every fabric. According to my inadvertent informant, their shared space was a battlefield between Jade's careful curation and Zeke's careless existence. She tried maintaining the facade on Instagram. Fresh flowers in crystal vases strategically placed in frame, carefully arranged casual breakfasts of avocado toast and cold brew. Each post meticulously crafted to portray a reborn female executive narrative. But between the filtered photos, reality was seeping through. 2 weeks into cohabitation, Jade discovered what I could have told her from the beginning. Zeke Dalton didn't clean up after himself. He didn't cook. His idea of financial planning was buying protein powder in bulk when it went on sale. He wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for a sponsor with benefits. Behind her back, he referred to me as the math fossil, a fact relayed by the same colleague who couldn't help but share the gossip during our quarterly strategy meeting. I let the comments slide off, imagining Jade's gradual realization of her displacement from corporate queen to a woman doing her own laundry in a rental unit she didn't choose. The breaking point came, as they often do, through a text message. One night, Zeke fell asleep while watching YouTube videos about chest gains without steroids. His phone screen illuminated with a notification from someone saved as Molly G. Her money's good enough. Tomorrow night again. Jade, suspicious by nature, picked up his phone ostensibly to turn off the screen. But her thumb slipped, revealing the message thread. She pays for Uber and takeout. Not fun anymore, but still worth it. Old but rich, just works for me. The next morning, while Zeke stood before the bathroom mirror rotating his biceps and complaining about his carb intake, Jade tossed his phone into the sink. "Explain," she demanded. Zeke laughed. Actually laughed without embarrassment or shame. "You used to be an exciting secret," he told her. "Now you're boring. Don't make a scene." She had chosen fire, but hadn't understood that fire only burns. It doesn't build. The aftermath sent her into a tailspin. She couldn't return to our former home. I'd already moved out. She had no friends to turn to. She'd alienated most during what she'd called her transformation. She drove aimlessly for nearly an hour before parking at a Whole Foods lot, sitting in silence. A mutual acquaintance spotted her there, eyes, vacant lips cracked with dehydration, not crying, just bewildered. The woman didn't approach. Instead, she texted me, concerned. I thanked her for the information and suggested she give Jade privacy. It wasn't cruelty. It was recognition that some lessons must be learned through complete isolation. Several days later, my phone displayed messages from Jade. "I hope we can maintain civility. I miss your calmness. Would you be willing to meet for coffee just to talk?" I read each one, set my phone down, and continued turning the page of my book. Her words deserved neither response nor acknowledgement. They were vapors dissipating into the air of consequence. On social media, Jade's posts became introspective. Gone were the rooftop cocktails and sunset filters replaced with black and white close-ups and captions like, "The journey itself is what matters." But the engagement dwindled. Friends grew distant. Colleagues stopped checking in. She was becoming invisible, no longer followed, no longer centered. The spotlight she'd sought through dramatic exit was dimming, leaving her in darkness of her own creation. I maintained my strategy of obscurity. I told no friends about our divorce proceedings. I kept the same profile picture. I never mentioned Jade, not even to correct assumptions that we were still together. I remained static, allowing her disquiet to sprout from uncertain ground. The absence of reaction is often more devastating than confrontation. It denies the other person the comfort of your pain. 3 months after she left, I prepared to host a dinner party. 7 people, including neighbors, close friends, and professional associates. The invitations went out via email, simple and direct. The message to Jade read, "Hosting dinner to open a new chapter. If you'd like to attend Thursday at 7 p.m. No warm invitation, no emotional overtones. It read like an administrative notice, the kind that requires no response but creates an obligation through its mere existence. I wasn't surprised when she replied within minutes, "I'll be there." Her response wasn't about reconnection, it was about information gathering, about seeing what she'd lost, about measuring the damage to determine if she'd won or lost in our silent war. Seated in my study, I reviewed the guest list. One final time I underlined the last name. Clara Winslow, attendance confirmed. I smiled, not because I'd won, but because the final board had been set. My new home in New Hope was everything our old house wasn't. Warm, peaceful, deliberately chosen. A 2-story colonial on a quiet street lined with maples and independent bookstores. The neighbors were friendly without being intrusive. Children rode bicycles without supervision. The whole town felt like a relic from a more civil era. I decorated with purpose abstract paintings where color spoke more than form. Warm amber lighting instead of harsh fluorescence, and not a single remnant of Jade's taste. The home smelled of cedar and lemon, earthy and bright, with no trace of the amber vanilla that had lingered in our former residence. For tonight's dinner, I'd transformed the dining room into a tableau of quiet elegance. A long oak table stretched beneath a hand-forged iron chandelier, gray linen tablecloth, white candles and silver holders, stemmed wine glasses, everything carefully chosen to convey permanence and calm. The menu was simple but deliberate: roasted sea bass with herb butter, seasonal vegetables, and lemon tart for dessert. I prepared everything myself. No caterers, no delivery. This meal would be created by my hands alone. Each guest's name card rested at their designated place. The chair beside mine remained conspicuously empty. Danielle Rusk arrived first, my goddaughter, who now managed a subsidiary of my consulting firm. She brought her new boyfriend, a tech startup founder with too much hair and genuine enthusiasm. He carried a bottle of Sancerre and couldn't stop praising the amazing vibe of my new home. "The energy here is completely different," Danielle whispered as she hugged me, her eyes full of protective loyalty. Alan and Margaret Richter arrived next, friends of 20 years who had watched my marriage to Jade with polite concern. Alan clasped my shoulder with the silent understanding men reserve for moments when words would be excessive. Ruth Delaney, my new neighbor, brought fresh-cut hydrangeas from her garden. "These just seemed right for your table," she said already, comfortable in my space, as only true neighbors can be. At precisely 6:59 p.m. The doorbell rang again. Jade stood on my porch, wearing a tailored blazer over a low-cut blouse, hair pulled into a severe updo, her familiar perfume projecting too strongly, as if she'd applied extra to mark her territory. Her smile was practiced, but her eyes were searching, cataloging every detail of my new world. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. The reception from my guests was a masterclass in polite dismissal. Danielle hugged her too tightly, eyes flashing with unspoken warning. Ruth's, "Oh, you must be Jade," followed by an immediate turn to refill someone else's glass. Alan's curt nod, the kind reserved for former business associates one barely remembers. Jade took a seat at the far end of the table, not the place of honor she once would have expected. The conversation flowed around her like water around a stone. Alan discussed his sailing plans. Danielle laughed about a recent client mishap. Ruth detailed her garden's unexpected resilience. Jade attempted to inject herself. "Oh, sea bass is so good for heart health." The comment hung in the air, acknowledged by nothing more than a brief pause before the conversation resumed. There was no space for her to enter. No opening through which she could claim relevance. At 7:18 p.m., the final player emerged from my kitchen holding a glass of white wine. Clara Winslow, Jade's former boss at Media Verve. The woman Jade had tried to undermine by stealing a strategic project and pushing her out of the company. Jade's scheme had failed, and she'd been forced to resign under the guise of philosophical differences. Clara, at 55, wore her silver hair in a tight chignon, her navy suit impeccably tailored. Her gaze sharp as a velvet-wrapped blade, Jade froze, nearly dropping her glass. She attempted a smile. "Hello, Clara." Clara glanced at her without pausing. "Oh, I almost didn't recognize you. You look different." No one added anything. No one needed to. The message was crystalline in its clarity. Clara took the seat next to me, her hand resting casually on my shoulder as she laughed at something Danielle said. The gesture wasn't romantic, it was territorial. A claim staked, Clara brought the lemon tart. I commented, lightly refilling her wine. "It's from that bakery on Elm you used to love, but I never quite appreciated." The implication settled over Jade like ash. Not only had she been replaced, but her replacement was someone she had once tried to destroy. Throughout dinner, the conversation moved with deliberate exclusion. Professional triumphs were discussed, ones Jade knew nothing about. Inside jokes were shared. Memories were referenced with "you remember when" directed at everyone but her. She sat stiffly, shoulders tense, clutching her napkin like it might anchor her to reality. Her eyes scanned for any sympathetic gaze, finding none. Danielle smiled coolly. Ruth discussed flower arrangements with Clara without so much as a glance in Jade's direction. When I poured wine for Clara, Jade's eyes held a lost expression. She opened her mouth to speak, but Clara smoothly interjected. "It's so refreshing to enjoy dinner without the tension of pretense at the table." Jade gripped her glass tightly, but offered no response. For the first time she understood she no longer had the position from which to respond. The dinner continued to constrict around Jade, like a room slowly shrinking. No one at the table mentioned our divorce or asked about her well-being. She might as well have been a ghost who had wandered into the wrong house. Every conversation passed through her, gliding by without pause, like breath through an open doorframe, acknowledged only by the slightest disturbance in air. She tried to smile occasionally, inserting polite comments about the food or the weather, but they were met with brief perfunctory smiles before the topic shifted again. Her words evaporated in the warm glow of candlelight, inconsequential vapor against the solid reality of my new life. The atmosphere around the dinner table was intimate and vibrant, but only between Clara, Danielle, Alan, Ruth, and Danielle's boyfriend. I poured wine for each person, asking thoughtful questions about work, family, never addressing Jade directly. The sea bass received enthusiastic praise from everyone, and when the lemon tart emerged for dessert, its bright citrus aroma filled the room. Precisely the dessert Jade had loved during our marriage, but that I had never eaten. Clara delivered her verbal daggers with surgical precision. "The tart is from that old place on Broad Street when it was still open," she remarked, slicing through the perfect crust with her fork. I watched Jade blink rapidly. That was the bakery she used to visit monthly, bringing home treats she thought I enjoyed. Clara continued with deliberate lightness. "Thomas mentioned he never actually ate it because it was too sour." I laughed and knew we had to try again. "Surprisingly, it's delicious." The table erupted in appreciative laughter. Jade attempted to join in, but her face remained rigid, her smile a plaster mask, cracking at the edges. When the dessert plates were distributed, I gently pushed a slice toward Jade. "Don't hesitate," I said quietly. "This tart is worth revisiting." The comment wasn't loud or sharp, but it pierced her heart like an ice needle. The double meaning hung in the air between us, a reminder that some things deserve second chances, but she wasn't one of them. She sat ramrod, straight, shoulders tense, gripping her napkin like it was a weapon. Her eyes swept across the table, searching for any sympathetic glance, finding none. Danielle smiled with glacial politeness. Ruth discussed hydrangea varieties with Clara without sparing Jade even a momentary glance. Her composure finally cracked. Everyone seems to have moved on quickly, she said, forcing casual conversation. You've changed rather suddenly. I sipped my wine before answering, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. You taught me that. I replied evenly, how suddenly people can flip the script. Clara gave a soft laugh. The table understood. Jade's eyes widened slightly, the first sign of genuine panic breaking through her facade. Later, she tried again, looking directly at Clara. I never expected to see you at this table. Clara's voice was cool as mountain water. I never expected to be invited, but I don't turn down valuable invitations. The reference to their professional past hung in the air. How Jade had once removed Clara from a company project, and now found herself similarly replaced in real life. As everyone enjoyed dessert, I raised my glass once more. To those who don't need fire to shine but know how to provide warmth. Danielle laughed appreciatively. Alan nodded with understanding. Ruth clapped softly. Jade lowered her head, offering no response. As the evening wound down, no one asked if she wanted to stay longer. She stood awkwardly, forcing a smile. I should probably leave early. The atmosphere is quite warm. I nodded. Drive safely. You still have the old SUV, right? A question that sounded like concern but was actually a reminder she had left with what I had allowed her to keep. Even the car was something I had permitted her to retain. I walked her to the door, not following her outside, not turning to watch her leave. Through the front window, I saw her pause in the parking area, staring into her rearview mirror. But I knew she wasn't checking for traffic. She was looking into a mirror of her past, seeing herself not as the victor she had imagined, but as what she truly was. The leftover, when the game concluded. Through the window, I could see Jade sitting in her SUV, not starting the engine. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her breathing visibly rapid and shallow. Her mouth opened and closed without forming words. From my vantage point, I could see her glance back at my house, watching the warm light spilling from the windows, hearing the muffled laughter, smelling the lingering scent of lemon and butter. Not our old house, but my new home, a place where she had no role, no history, no claim. I returned to my guests, my expression unchanged. Clara was recounting an old corporate anecdote from before Jade's attempted coup, and everyone was laughing heartily. Danielle poured more wine into my glass, resting her hand on my shoulder with affectionate pride. You really cleaned house, didn't you? She said with a smile that acknowledged the double meaning. I nodded slightly. Not for revenge, but because I no longer wanted to keep what wasn't worth keeping. My new home contained no old photographs, no mementos of my life with Jade. Every object had been deliberately chosen, from the stemware to the napkins to the dining table itself, which was round instead of rectangular. No head of the table, no most important position, just equal places in a perfect circle. What Jade didn't know, what she would never know, was that the Vermont cabin she had mockingly called my financial sinkhole had become my weekend writing retreat, where I was slowly crafting a memoir. The investment properties she believed we'd split in the divorce were merely shells. The real financial assets had been transferred long before she ever said, "I'm done with this." She thought she'd gotten half of our shared life, but what she received was only what I had decided to leave behind, like crumbs on a dinner plate. I opened my real estate tracking app, noting with quiet satisfaction that my rental properties had increased in value by 11% in the past 2 months. The very apartment building where she and Zeke now lived was owned by one of my shell companies, hidden behind 3 layers of legal proxies. Zeke had no idea that the man he'd called the math fossil was now effectively his landlord. 2 weeks after the dinner party, my phone displayed another message from Jade. I'm sorry, if you could forgive me, I still think about us. I left it marked read without responding, not out of anger, but because she had exited the story permanently. The true ending wasn't dramatic or violent. It required no shouting, no confrontation, no explicit victory. The final chapter was written in peaceful silence. On my front porch the following Sunday, I sat reading while Clara relaxed beside me, sipping ginger tea. A cardinal landed on my fence, bright red calm belonging perfectly to the landscape. I watched it, appreciating its quiet confidence. Nothing is more valuable than authentic tranquility, I thought, the kind no one can counterfeit. And so the old chapter closed. No slamming doors, no histrionics, no need for a declaration of victory, only the knowledge that she had lost the moment she first walked out my door. I took a final bite of lemon tart, looking up at the sunset. The tart was still sour, but I smiled because now I knew how to appreciate it. This flavor wasn't meant for those in a hurry, but for those who understood patience like me.